Welcome to this explainer. You know, whenever we talk about Pompeii, we almost always think of its story as starting and ending on a single catastrophic day in 79 AD. But the true story? It's so much bigger than that. It stretches decades before the eruption and centuries after the ashes finally settled. So let's dig in.
Okay, let's set the scene here. It's a bustling morning in August, 79 AD. I want you to picture a vibrant, deeply interconnected Roman city of about 20,000 people. Merchants, bakers, freedmen, and slaves are all just going about their day. The streets are wet from the morning cleaning, the local street food counters are serving up spiced wine, and absolutely no one realizes they are living on borrowed time. They're completely unaware of the ticking time bomb sitting right beneath their feet.
Right, let's dive into this macro timeline, and I want you to notice that event right in the middle, at 62 AD. Because Pompeii's destruction wasn't entirely without warning. 17 years before the famous eruption, a massive earthquake, hitting somewhere between a 5 and 6 on the Richter scale, tore through the region. Buildings collapsed, the records of a local banker just abruptly stopped, and a flock of 600 sheep mysteriously died. I mean, the earth was literally rumbling with warnings.
So here's the absolutely crucial point. How did the Romans react to that massive quake? Well, they didn't abandon the city. In fact, they showed incredible resilience. In the 17 years following the earthquake, archaeologists have found a staggering 250% increase in urban agricultural gardens. Rather than fleeing, the people of Pompeii adapted. They converted their damaged residential properties into vineyards, orchards, and perfume gardens. They were actively repairing, swapping out building materials, and creatively overcoming their challenges right up until the very end.
But as we know, that resilience was about to be put to the ultimate test. Around 1 p.m. on that fateful August day, Vesuvius finally announced itself. We actually have an eyewitness account from a 17-year-old boy named Pliny the Younger. He was watching from 30 kilometers across the bay, and he wrote, "The cloud looked like a pine tree, with a vast trunk rising straight up and branches of debris spreading sideways." Just imagine looking up into a clear summer sky and seeing that completely alien shape blocking out the sun.
And the scale of this thing, it's honestly almost impossible to wrap your head around. That pine tree Pliny described was actually a Plinian column of gas, rock, and volcanic ash blasting vertically into the sky, eventually reaching an incredible 33 kilometers high. To put that into perspective, scientists estimate that what the people of Pompeii were watching was the energy equivalent of 100,000 Hiroshima bombs just detonating in slow motion over their city.
Let's track this minute-by-minute terror. At 1 p.m., the eruption kicks off. For the first 18 hours, there's just a deadly rain of pumice and ash falling on Pompeii. The darkness was absolute. Think about being in a completely sealed room with all the lights out. People had to make a split-second decision. Do you flee into the chaotic unknown or stay inside and just hope it passes? As the ash slowly choked the city, burying it meter by meter, the final fatal pyroclastic surges arrived the next morning on August 25th, locking the remaining inhabitants in their final poses.
Now, geography literally changed everything here. Notice the distinct and horrifying fates of Pompeii and its twin city, Herculaneum, which was just 7 kilometers from the volcano's summit. Pompeii was buried relatively slowly under 4 to 6 meters of falling volcanic ash and pumice over a day or two. But Herculaneum? It was hit almost instantly by searing 20-meter deep pyroclastic surges and boiling mud. Actually, mud doesn't even do it justice. It was a hot volcanic slurry that carbonized everything from wooden furniture to wax tablets in an absolute instant.
So who actually perished in Pompeii? Well, the estimated death toll is around 15 to 20% of its population. Many thousands actually managed to flee in those early hours. The ones who died were disproportionately those who just couldn't easily leave: the poor, the enslaved, the elderly, the sick, and those who clung to the hope that this nightmare was survivable if they just waited it out inside their homes.
But remember, our timeline doesn't just abruptly end in 79 AD. Let's look at the immediate political aftermath. Emperor Titus had just taken power months before. This was a massive acid test for his leadership, and he mounted a really swift, organized response. He appointed a commission, assessed the regional destruction, and brilliantly reallocated the land of victims who died without heirs to help fund the recovery. He used the wealth of the dead to help the living, and he didn't take a single coin for his own imperial coffers.
And here, this is where we bust one of the biggest myths about Pompeii. It was not completely abandoned and forgotten. Decades and centuries of post-eruption reoccupation followed.
We have a first resettlement phase stretching all the way to the 3rd century, and a second phase going deep into the mid-5th century, before a final abandonment happened after another massive eruption in 472 CE.
So, what did this incredible survival actually look like on the ground? Archaeologists have found amazing evidence of a subsistence economy thriving right on top of the ash. Survivors and newcomers of low social standing occupied upper floors that literally jutted out over the debris. They repurposed the lower buried floors as cellars. They were actually building bread ovens inside reused water cisterns. And most poignantly, archaeologists found the burial of a newborn dated somewhere between 100 and 200 CE. People were living, adapting, and even starting families directly above the ruins.
All right, fast forward through the centuries. The exact location of the city kind of faded into memory, known simply as the Old City to the locals. That is, until we hit our macro timeline of rediscovery. In 1748, systematic excavations finally began. In 1841, to prevent future tragedies, the world's first volcanological institute was founded right on Vesuvius. And then, in 1860, a real game-changer happened that would shift how we view Pompeii forever.
And that breakthrough was Giuseppe Fiorelli's plaster cast method. Excavators were finding these hollow cavities in the solid ash where human bodies had decomposed over time. Fiorelli realized that if you pour liquid plaster into that cavity before digging out the surrounding ash, you create a perfect mold. This brilliant technique finally allowed us to see the exact shapes, those final poses of self-defense, and the very faces of the victims. It gave a devastatingly human form to this ancient tragedy.
Which brings us to today. And really, it brings us to the ultimate question Pompeii poses to us. The Romans believed Vesuvius was just a mountain. They had no framework, no scientific history to understand its immense power. Today, we have seismographs, satellite monitoring, and complex pyroclastic flow models. We have the warning that Pompeii never had. But with populations still living right in the shadow of that fertile, dangerous mountain today, will we heed the warning of Vesuvius when it inevitably wakes again? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Until next time, keep questioning and keep exploring.